Good Shabbos, everyone. Recently, I was playing a family game called Telestrations. You may have heard of it before. It's basically a modern version of the age-old game of broken telephone. Players are prompted to sketch a word listed on a card. All players, then all at the same time, then pass their sketch to the next player, who must guess what's been drawn. Players continue to draw and guess until they have their original drawings back. As you can imagine, the sketches never come back looking the same. In one game I was playing, in a matter of just 3 turns, I saw quickly a chocolate chip cookie turned into a UFO. And in a game like Telestrations, the lack of consistency can create a lot of fun. But that would not work so well on a holiday like Passover. Could you imagine a Seder in which there was no fixed text, no Haggadah for us to use? With no consistent framework, people could decide for themselves what they wanted to cut from the Seder. Shorten the number of plagues, do 1 cup of wine instead of 4, take out the salt water and maror. Yes, it's great that in our day and age, many people have added different activities to make the experience more enjoyable. The rabbis over time urged all of us to create meaningful and positive experiences at the Seder table. As Rabbi Morgan described last night, ingenuity is encouraged, but something has to keep it organized. There has to be consistency. The major parts of the Seder can't be dropped. There still has to be an order in the telling of our story of our people's exodus from slavery to freedom. If there was no general consistency on how the Passover or Seder is conducted over time, instead of Avadim Hayinu, we were slaves in Egypt, we could be reciting we were royalty in Monaco. Without dedication to the general story of the Haggadah, we risk losing the identities that bind us together as a people. It's the same with the Torah. We can certainly add our own creative explanations, interpretations to what our Torah is teaching us, our own commentaries. The Divrei Torah, the speeches that our students offer at every bar mitzvah, we want to apply the eternal lessons and values of the Torah to our modern era. But the core elements of the story can never change. The Torah text has been consistent for thousands of years. The great stories we read every year from the Torah stay the same, so they can be passed on from generation to generation. For example, in our Torah portion this morning of Tazria, the elements, the way in which someone is introduced back to the camp, those rituals have to stay the same. So it is with our prayers. In a conservative shul such as ours, we can add creative melodies and explanations. We should continue to make some changes to make our prayer more inclusive, but we can't eliminate the most basic prayers. If we did, we would lose the consistency that allows our students to learn the major prayers that have kept our people together for centuries. By doing so, our children and grandchildren can walk into any synagogue in the world and follow along with the service. Since we can't cut the prayers or the Torah reading from services, that only leaves the sermon. And of course, who in their right mind would want to see that cut? Consistency isn't just a key to maintaining our Jewish identity. It's not just in Judaism that our methods and our stories need to stay regular and constant. It's what makes a synagogue like Beth Yeshurun a conservative, traditional synagogue. But outside of Judaism, in many ways, it's the same. My wife, Lisa, is a criminal defense attorney, like our 2 B'not Mitzvah mothers today. And when we watch Law and Order, or a law show like it, she reminds me why they divide multiple suspects in a criminal investigation. Because during the separate interviews, they want to see if a consistent story emerges. A lack of consistency among a group of suspects is a chink in their defense. The group loses credibility. Consistency is equally important in the way we live our lives and in our relationships. It's hard to get into shape, even if we push off just one workout. It's hard to maintain a strong relationship with our spouses, even if we forget just one anniversary. I dare any husbands to try forgetting any anniversary, just one, and you'll be quickly reminded just how important consistency is. It's hard to preserve rules for our children, even when we make one exception for a curfew. When we're inconsistent, we slowly eat away at the trust we have built with those we love. Yes, our relationships will evolve over time, but there are certain elements that require consistency to keep them sacred, holy, important. My friends, more than ever before, our children need to hear and see consistent messages from their parents. Think of the recent college admissions scandal, in which dozens of parents paid thousands of dollars to secure their children's admissions to elite universities across the country, including the University of Texas. As a proud UT alum, I do have to point out one roadside sign outside a restaurant in Austin. It read, "Texas A&M furious that no one wanted to pay bribes to be admitted to its campus." Now, UT only had one, but it's better than A&M 0. After the college admissions scandal was exposed, our attention, the media, the news, was focused in on the ramifications for those wealthy parents. We think of the jail time actresses like Lori Loughlin and Felicity Huffman now face. But think about their children, the inconsistent messages they received from their parents. I'm sure the parents told their children again and again that they believed in them, that they were happy with their level of success. But then they went out and broke the law to get their children into better schools. They acted as if they really didn't trust their own children to find the right universities for themselves on their own. According to the investigation, one father lied about his son playing water polo to get him into a better school. But then the father worried that since his son didn't actually play water polo, he would be perceived by his peers as just another bench warmer. So the father paid even more money to get the assurance that while his son would be admitted as a water polo player, he actually wouldn't be on the water polo team. I'm sure the father was doing what he thought was best for his son, but of course he wasn't. Another parent paid someone to take the ACT for her son, and then pretended to proctor it for him herself at home so her son would think he was the test taker. Think of the long-term ramifications for these young adults. I'm sure many of these parents told their children that they simply wanted the best for them. What parent wouldn't? However, what these parents demonstrated to their children is that they really didn't believe in them. An inconsistent message like this can doom a young person for a lifetime. Yet sometimes, do we do the same? We tell our children to work their hardest. We tell them to be strong. We tell them to be determined. We tell them to go out and be independent, so one day they can go out on their own and create successful careers. But then, do we go out and do almost everything for them? According to a recent New York Times article, helicopter parenting, the practice of hovering anxiously near one's children, monitoring their every activity, has been replaced today by something even worse, a parenting style known as snowplow parenting. Parents who actually act like snowplows, machines chugging ahead, clearing any obstacles in their child's path to success so they don't have to encounter failure at all. No frustration, no lost opportunities. We all know parents like these. As the article describes, it starts early. When parents get on wait lists for elite preschools before their babies are even born, and try to make sure their toddlers are never compelled to do anything that may actually frustrate them. It gets more intense when school starts. A child forgets an assignment in middle school and high school, and the parent is the first one to leave work, go home, pick up the assignment, and deliver it to them at school. Or calling a coach to request that their child make a team or get more playing time. Later, it's writing them an excuse if the procrastination makes them late on their schoolwork or homework, or even calling their professors to argue about a grade. Taken to its criminal extreme, that means bribing SAT proctors and paying off college coaches to get their children into elite universities. The parents charged in the admission scandal investigation are, of course, far outside the norm, but they were acting as ultimate snowplows, clearing the way for their children to get into college, a better college, while shielding them away from any of the difficulty, any of the risk, any of the potential disappointment of the application process. Yes, all parents want their children to have more than they had. I know I do for my 3 children. But when we as parents take control for our children, the message we're demonstrating to them is not, I love you and will do anything for you. It's, you're not good enough to do all of this on your own. There's no consistency at all. So instead of feeling loved and secure, they feel incapable and insecure. Studies on human development have shown this to be true. One psychologist at Yale University says that parents can help too much, and in so doing, they weaken their child's confidence and motivation and negatively impact the development of their basic coping skills. There's a reason that colleges today are now offering classes to actually teach their students to practice failing. Classes to practice failing. As parents, can we prioritize our children's development of our own projected desires for their success? Can we give them consistent messages on what we say to them and how we act? Doing so only prepares our children for the real world that awaits them. One psychologist from an Ivy League university recently wrote how she regularly sees college freshmen who've had to come home from college because they didn't have the minimal kinds of adult skills that one needs to be in college. One came home because there was a rat found in her dorm room. Some, they didn't like their roommates. Others said that it was just too much work. They had never learned how to study on their own. One actually, from Princeton University, came home because she didn't like to eat food with sauce. Her whole life, her parents had helped her avoid sauce, calling friends before going to their houses for dinner. But at college, she didn't know how to cope with the cafeteria options covered in sauce, so she actually came home from college. At one elite university, another one, a mother once called the freshman dean to ask her to list the items in the school salad bar so she could choose what her daughter should eat for lunch. You know it's bad when you're doing that. One dean actually saw students at another elite university rely on their parents to set up play dates with other people in their dorm. Or saw other parents complain to their child's employers when an internship didn't lead to a job. Yes, of course, it's a parent's job to support their children and to use their adult wisdom to prepare for the future when their children aren't mature enough to do so on their own. That's why when they're very young, we hide certain toys to avoid temper tantrums, or we take away a teenager's car keys when they've done something really wrong. But if our children have never faced an obstacle on their own, what happens when they get into that real world? Experts now say that snowplowing parenting is one of the major reasons we're actually seeing young adults in 2019 America with record rates of anxiety and depression. And perhaps our rabbis understood this when they wrote 2,000 years ago in one of my favorite sections, and I think one of the most important sections of the Babylonian Talmud, when they wrote that when a parent has a child, they're obligated to teach them 4 things, to give them 4 things, to give them a bris or baby naming, to get them married off one day, to teach them an occupation. But then the 4th element is a strange one. It says that a parent is obligated to teach their child how to swim. Now, why swim? Many of the rabbis say it's not literally how to swim in water, how to swim in a river or a pool, but really what the rabbis are saying is how to swim above water in the real world, how to stay above water in the world that awaits them when they become adults, how to stay above, act on their own, survive on their own. in their future as adult men and women. One former dean at Stanford put it in a very similar way when she wrote, "Snowplow parents have it backwards. The point is to prepare the kid for the road instead of preparing the road for the kid. Properly preparing the kid for the road instead of trying to prepare the road for the kid." Giving our children consistent messages with our words and our actions can go a very long way in helping prepare our children for the long and very exciting road that awaits them. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.